All right, Doug. Thanks so much for taking the time. We've had some issues with organizing this call just because I'm 15 hours behind ahead. I don't even know anymore. Where are you based right now?
I'm in the Boulder County area of Colorado. So yeah, I think you're like
Okay.
13 hours ahead of me or something like that.
Okay. Yeah. Some crazy stuff. Anyway, so in 2023, I actually attended a bunch of SEO conferences, and in these SEO conferences, you end up meeting a bunch of the SEO big shots. And I've had quite a few people actually tell me that I had to meet you and talk to you. Specifically, I recall Jamie IF, who's big on Twitter. I'm sure most of the audience knows who he is, and also Ariel Phoenix. A lot of them credit a lot of their success to you. So super stoked that we can make this happen. Been watching your channel and all the stuff you've been doing for a while. So thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And those two folks are super nice to say that. Obviously, they did a ton of hard work, but if they want to tell people to meet me, that's great. So yeah, thanks
Yeah,
for inviting me.
yeah, absolutely. So given your expertise and your experience on building niche sites, I do want to talk about a lot of SEO specifics. Is that cool with you?
Yeah, anything you want.
All right, dope. So actually, before we get into the SEO, I need to ask a personal question, not a personal question, but a question for me that I need to know, which is how the hell is your YouTube channel growing so fast? Because I think I remember seeing your channel a few months ago. Maybe it was under 50K, maybe around 50K, and now you're over 100. What
Yes.
what what's going on?
So I would love to say that it's some little trick that I found, something where I'm like, all right, I'm producing better content. I really figured out the algorithm, but it's far simpler than that. I'm just running some ads using
Okay,
the promotions tab
nice.
under the dashboard and content. So this is a feature that was in beta for, I don't know, 6 months or something like that. And I didn't play around with it too much. I have always dabbled, probably for the last 4 years, with AdWords and just running some YouTube ads, like suggested videos, nothing aggressive. I'm not selling anything. I was really just trying to promote the channel. And I would spend maybe between, say, $50 and $300 per month or so, depending on what I was testing. AdWords did not seem to be very effective. I would get a little bit of traction, but not too much. But I like to test things. Then after a few months of the beta testing for the promotions tab under content in your dashboard under YouTube Studio, a friend of mine, Alex Cooper from WP Eagle, mentioned,
Hmm.
hey, I tested it out and it looked like it worked pretty good, but I got some views. I got some new subscribers, like 1,000 new subscribers, but it looked like maybe they didn't really interact with the videos. They didn't like it. They didn't comment, but they subscribed. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then didn't do anything with it. Anyway, for probably a year or so, my subscriber growth had dropped down to maybe like 150 new subscribers per month.
Okay.
Before that, it was like about 500 per month for like 5 years straight. Just pretty
Yeah.
consistent. Some of those old
Yep.
videos pulling in, but algorithms change, and that's what happened here. So in early December of 2023, I started running ads. I had 39,000 subscribers, and sure as shit, just like Alex said, I started running some ads to a couple of the recent videos. I was getting like 1,000 new subscribers per day. So it's crazy, right? And it wasn't a
Insane.
huge amount of money. It was virtually the same as what I was spending. I haven't tracked it super close or gone back to look, but really, I'm just running ads. The downside is, so most of my viewers have traditionally been in like US, UK, Canada, Australia, English speaking, sort of like bigger countries, right?
Hmm.
Most of the new subscribers and views most of the time seem to come from India, Pakistan, and
Yeah.
Bangladesh, right?
Yep.
Great viewers
Makes
and
sense.
all that stuff, like great countries, but it's
Right.
just like not the English speaking countries.
Right.
So anyway, it's over 100K. I'm gonna get the little silver plaque and everything, and
You're gonna get that. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
That's great.
So
And so are those viewers interacting with videos, or the views going up as well?
the views are going up. They're interacting a very, very minor amount,
Okay.
not what I would expect. So basically, no. The answer is they're not interacting much.
Interesting.
But I was like, this is an interesting test. I don't see anyone
Yeah,
else
yeah.
doing it. Like there's some
That's really
smart
cool.
other folks in our industry that are doing a lot of videos. They're publishing one per day. They have tremendous growth. I don't know if they're running ads or anything like that, but I haven't seen any like other channels growing like that that don't have some viral component. So it's working right now. And it's one of those
Yeah.
things where I'm
Yeah.
like, you know what? I didn't think I would ever hit 100K, or it would be like 5 or 6 years in my. So anyway, that's all I've done. The other, I mean, I don't know if this would work if other people did it, right? How many videos do you have on your channel?
Maybe long form or just,
Doesn't matter.
I think probably under 200.
Okay. Still a solid amount. I mean, that takes a lot of time. I have
Yeah.
over 2,000. So I don't know if
Ooh.
there's some
Okay.
component where it's
Yeah.
like, okay, like I have
Yeah.
a foundation that allows it to grow like that. But for now, it's working and I'm checking it out. I mean, unfortunately, I don't have a better story other than I found a
No,
little
we'll
trick.
take it. Yeah, we'll take it. No, it's great. That's great. All
Yeah.
right, so let's get to what the audience really wants, right? They want to get all that SEO juice from you. But let's go to the start. So, how did you go from? I know you were in corporate for quite a few years. How did you go from corporate to that first success with your first niche site?
So I had a job as a management consultant and I did like project management. One kind of cool thing, I actually worked from home from maybe like 2008
Damn.
for not completely, but it would be like, about half
Yeah.
time at home, and I was on various projects. So there was actually a lot more flexibility than what it could have been in the old days before we were able to work from home at all with like a laptop and all that kind of stuff. So I'm that old, just to reference myself. Okay. So I wasn't interested in entrepreneurship or side hustles or anything, but one day I found a podcast, Smart Passive Income, and
Mm,
he was talking about niche sites and earning money online, and it sounded like a scam, but I was hooked. So I started listening basically like all day long. So I was probably listening like 6, 7 hours a day. And within a month, I was like, I'm going to start a website. I'm going to check this out. It sounds kind of cool. It was a total flop. That one didn't work out, but
okay.
I was definitely willing to take action and make mistakes and keep
Yeah.
moving forward. So one of the other mistakes, just a fun thing that everyone does, I think I had all these different niche ideas and different website ideas. So I think I bought like 25 domains, like,
Classic.
and
Yeah.
just
No. Yeah.
I was like, okay, next year I'll do something with it. And then eventually I realized I'm not doing anything with any of those. And then you have to let
Hmm.
the registration go, which is what people should do. So if you're out there and you have a bunch of domains that are
Just let it
future
go.
projects, yeah, save yourself
Yeah.
some time.
Yeah.
So after a few months, I started to learn a little bit more. I understood sort of the keyword research tools and some of the pieces of the puzzle and all that. And Spencer Hawes at Niche Pursuits, he was doing a challenge. He called it Niche Site Project, which later
There
on
you
I
go.
asked him if I could use that name for my blog, and he said, "Sure,
Right.
go for it."
Yep.
So thanks to Spencer for that. Anyway, that focus was Amazon affiliate, and that worked. So my goal with that project was to earn $350 per month, and I was hoping that I could do that within, say, 6 months or a year. I think I hit, say, $100 within 2 months. These were the old days. This was 2013, so you can't really
Okay.
do this now.
Is
But
this site number two? This is your second site?
uh, we could call it like the second major project, but I'm sure I
Okay.
had maybe like two other small sites. But yeah, second site. Yep.
Okay. Damn.
And by I think 4 months in, I made like $500. So completely shattered like what I
Holy
thought.
hell. Yeah.
And then it went from like 500 to 1200 to like 3000 to like 6000, and I hit the retail season. So I started the site like in July, like I bought the registration, and then it grew really fast, really sharp, steep curve to December. And I was like, I'm a genius. I got everything figured out. And like all
Mhm.
good SEO stories, I got a manual penalty. The site dropped. Revenue went down to like $150 in January. And then I learned my first lesson about like, don't fly too close to the sun.
Mhm. Were you building? What were you doing that got the penalty? You think PBNs, or what was going on at the time?
Oh, so many things. Yeah.
Okay.
PBNs. PBNs for sure. We were also doing, I mean, this was the practice back in the day.
Right.
So
Right.
I,
Yeah.
I literally looked at Pat Flynn's like link building guide from 2011, and he was going to Fiverr, building link wheels, link pyramids, Web 2.0s. Private blog networks were in their heyday. People were starting to
Yep.
really, they were public networks.
Yep.
And anyway, we were very sloppy, very aggressive. And I mean, it worked. Like a lot of, bleeding edge SEO tactics, very effective, very volatile, super risky. And you can't, quit your job based on that. You have to understand that it is extremely volatile and risky.
Yep.
But yeah, we did everything. The one good thing, I wrote all that content myself. The content was great. And it was
Mm.
something I was interested in and doing research on. And I've probably only spent that sort of time and effort on one or two other sites. But it was,
Interesting.
I mean, I learned a ton about that specific industry.
Amazing. Okay, and so from there, how many more sites came after that? Were you just copying and pasting what you saw worked on that site and just continue to build?
More or less. So I had that penalty in January of 2014. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to get an age domain. It was an expired domain. I actually found it
Hmm.
myself. And I was like, I'm just going to move the content over there. So this old domain didn't wasn't going to be recoverable. So I moved it to all the content to a new one. That didn't work for some reason or another. And the reason why is it was like not the same niche at all. It was like some random other domain. And at the same time that I had that going, I was like, okay, I'm going to use my skills from like operations. I have a project management professional certification, so I'm good at scaling things and like repeatable processes. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna move the site that was penalized over somewhere else, and then I'm gonna start new sites. So I think I started maybe like 4 new sites that spring, and things were kind of growing. At that point, I wasn't writing all the content, so that was another issue. The quality wasn't as good. I was
Hmm.
also good at hiring people, so I started hiring more writers, and I would train them, but the quality wasn't as good as anyone knows, right? Like
Right.
anyone else writing it is not going to do as good of a job as you
Yep.
are. They don't care as much. They're watching the clock. They're trying to hit a word count. So those started to get a couple sales, get some traffic, and then penalized again because things with PBNs and Web 2.0s and all that kind of stuff, it was still working a little bit, but Google was figuring things out. So it was one of those days where I logged into Search Console and like everything had a manual penalty. So they just went to my account and
Yeah.
everything was in there. So that was another mistake, right?
Goodbye.
So
Yeah.
they turned everything off and everything got a penalty. So I was like, oh man, all right, I need to rethink these things a little bit closer. But the other thing that we haven't mentioned so far is at the beginning in 2013, when I had that first success, I was naive and stupid enough to start niche site project and think, I want to have a personal brand. I want to build an email list and I want to have digital products. And I'm going to do this in parallel, which really suppressed the growth on everything. But in the long run, here we are 10 years later, it was a really good move to spread my
Yeah.
efforts. And I mean, I worked much harder than I needed to. Like focusing is always better, but now I could sit and tell you like, hey, it did pay off. Like having an email list was huge because I
Right.
was able to share my stories and sell products and be an affiliate for other products. And it gave me a way to like connect with other people because, if someone developed a keyword research tool. They maybe would reach out to me, or I would reach out to them. I could feature their product. So I'm like networking within the industry. So
Yeah, that's great.
like you
That's
said,
great.
if you go to conferences, like a couple people will know who I am because I've been around doing this stuff for a little while.
Yeah. Yeah. So how did you go from building all these niche sites to then coming up with the keyword golden ratio? What's the story behind that?
So around that time in 2014, I was realizing that our normal approach, the approach that I used for the first few sites, wasn't working as well. And it's one of those where everyone is doing a certain thing. So why don't I try to do the opposite? So at the time, people were looking at search volumes of say 8,000 or something for like their main keyword. And then they would find like some secondary keywords, but most everything was based on this like big multi-thousand searches per month keyword.
Hmm.
And that was great for a time. Like I said, I was able to rank a pretty big term within a couple months in 2013, but things were shifting. And I was like, all right, if everyone's doing that, why don't I try the opposite? I was also in a couple mastermind groups with people that were, doing low search volume, low competition keyword research. And they were like, this is working great. And I remember hearing a couple interviews out there too, where people were doing things a little bit differently. Instead of going for even like 1,000 searches per month, or like, 10 to 20 searches per month. If it shows up, if it looks like anyone's searching at all, I'll go for it. So I kept hearing a couple stories like that. It was kind of on the fringe. So I thought, all right, I'm going to take that approach. And like a lot of good ideas, this is like pieced together from like good ideas from many other people that were doing similar things. So people keep an eye out, right? Like this stuff happens all the time, and you could do the same thing, like cherry pick the good ideas from various people. Maybe you could mash it together and make up your own thing. But that was it. I was like, I'm going to try the opposite. So I tested it out. I can't even remember the sort of case study I did, but I was like, all right, I'm going to try this with say 20 or 30 keyword golden ratio keywords and see what happens. And it was crazy. I think it was like a 70% success rate, like traffic was coming in. And I was like, okay, now that I've tested it on a smaller scale, I'm going to take this a little bit further. Now, this is not going to sound impressive now, but back in 2015, 2016, this was a lot of content. So I was like, I'm going to publish 200 articles that are keyword golden ratio compliant, and I'm going to publish it like whatever, 6 months or 4 months or whatever it was. Again, not impressive now in the day of AI, but 200 articles back then, like
That's a
that was
lot.
one of my
Yeah, it's a lot.
most popular videos, right? Because people are like, 200 articles, this guy's crazy.
Yeah.
So that worked great. The blog grew, earnings grew again back in 2016. The commission rates at Amazon they were volume based. So if you sold
Mhm.
enough products, you could be getting like 8.5%, not what we see today, which is more like
Yeah.
3%.
Yeah.
So we're
Today's
talking
great.
like
Yeah.
close to 3x. So like
Wow.
revenue exploded. And then I was like, I'm figuring some of this stuff out. So keyword golden ratio, it's awesome branding. Like there's no golden ratio in this, right? Like if people go look up golden ratio, this doesn't fit. It's just cool branding. And by the way,
Smart. Really smart. Really
thank
smart.
you. Thanks. And
Yeah.
again, like it was someone that I was a neighbor of mine who I was showing some of this stuff, and he was like, "Oh yeah, that's Doug's golden ratio." And I was like, "Can do you mind if I use that?" And I'll say keyword golden ratio. So the thing is, like, it's been around long enough where people have said, I don't like that, or here's the issues with it, or whatever. It's not perfect. It's a good tool, but the thing is, like, people don't pay attention and they don't care. I talked about this stuff for 2 years before anyone like paid attention, but
Mhm.
eventually enough people used it,
Yeah.
enough people talked about it.
Yep.
And I was chatting with Kyle Roof the other day, and he's actually
Yep.
gonna talk about how he uses the keyword golden ratio, which is a fantastic endorsement. And he has a couple of layers that he's added on top. But he mentioned to me, I have it written down something like a 70 to 80% success rate, but he
Yeah.
puts it through like 2 additional little filters to make sure that it's a keyword that he wants to go after.
Can we know what those filters are, or is that under wraps?
I don't know what they are exactly.
Okay.
We didn't get super in depth. We were just chatting, but I know one of them is just to look at the sort of tier or authority of the sites that have keywords that are ranking.
Mhm.
So pretty standard competition analysis.
Right. Okay.
And then there's another one that I don't know. So Kyle was keeping
Interesting.
me interested. Yeah. So I need to
Yeah.
chat with him again and he'll tell me what it is,
Yeah.
which,
I gotta get Kyle back on here. Yeah.
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 Cool. So, how do you think SEO has changed from those days to SEO today? A lot has changed, but what do you think are the main things? And we're going to talk about AI. So, if you want to save your AI speech for later, I'm down.
Before I mention what has changed, I think a lot of stuff has still remained. So a lot of the content that I created like 5 or 6 years ago, like, it holds up, and I've talked to other people that, maybe they've created courses with the context that I asked them about, but foundationally, it's like 70 or 80% the same. It's like
Yep.
links matter a lot, good content matters even more, and, don't mess around too much with, gray hat stuff. Like, if you remember those couple things, then you're in good shape. Awesome links from like New York Times or big media outlets, those were always awesome. They're still awesome. Now we're calling it like digital PR, but it was kind of the same thing, right?
Yep.
So foundationally, a lot of the stuff is really the same. And if you just stick to that and you're really good at getting, you know, links from niche relevant sources and you were doing that 5 years ago, it's even more effective now because
Yep.
it's hard to do. So
Yeah. It's harder. Yeah.
so a couple things that have changed, like Google has gotten better at, I think, maybe catching up with some of the gray hat activities that it doesn't like, or at least are, I don't know if they're better at reacting to it with helpful content in the helpful content update at the end of 2023. I think the consensus overall is it wasn't that good of an update and
Yep.
people don't seem to be finding the things that they're looking for in certain areas.
Yeah.
So another thing is I think the time to rank has just gotten longer. And that's a pretty easy one to see. Like I mentioned in 2013, I ranked the site pretty quickly. And nowadays, like that's a lot more difficult unless you're doing something much more dramatic. So I have heard of people getting a lot of traffic if they're publishing like thousands of articles using AI or something like that.
Mhm.
But I mean, I think generally people are taking much longer to rank. So those are the main couple areas. I think it might be a little more saturated as the SEO industry has matured and there's more information out there. There's more conferences. There's more qualified people doing SEO. I think that makes a difference too. So the
Yeah.
bar is higher just
Yeah.
generally to rank. What do
Yeah.
you think? Do you have any big ones? What did
No, I think the main goal of that question is for people to realize that it's like mostly the same thing, right? It's just you just have to keep creating really solid content and just great links, and that's half of it, right? And just being consistent because most people aren't consistent. Most people they work in spurts and then they just die off, and the people who are consistent are the ones that win. So that's what I think.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And I think, just on that note, I mean, we're talking SEO and usually the written word and Google, but I think the consistency makes a huge difference in anything, whether it's like a podcast or, I mean, I don't do much social media, but with anything, you get your reps in. And if you have a long enough timeline, a lot of times your competitors are going to drop off. They're not going to keep
Yep.
going. So if
Yep.
I could do something that's subpar yet sustainable, like look at my YouTube channel. I have a lot of videos. There's a lot of stinkers in the 2000, but there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them, and I've consistently published
Yeah.
videos for a very long time.
Yeah. Yeah. My younger brother's also on YouTube. He's got around 50K subs, and the our main motto is just A plus consistency, B plus effort. Like regardless if the video is going to be kind of trash, just get it out. Just get it out. It doesn't matter. Maybe next week it'll be better. Next week it'll pop off, but this week just get a video up.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, and that works. That works.
Yeah.
All right. So one thing you said is that the content you were creating in 2015, very similar. No, maybe I don't know if you said 2015 or 5 years ago, but the content you're creating a few years ago, very similar to the content that you'd be creating now. So could you talk to us a little bit about what that process looks like? Are you using AI nowadays? And if you are, what tools are you liking? What tools have you tried? What do you think?
So a couple caveats just to let people know where I'm at. So I'm not currently building like new sites. The last one that I started fresh was I think in 2020 or so. Yeah, that sounds right. So a few years ago, and a lot has changed since then, AI was not where it was back then. So and where it is now. So just keep that in mind. So I'm not using any tools to publish in mass. I am using AI quite a bit for some other things, and I may start publishing a little bit more. So that's sort of the caveat.
Okay.
What I would do these days is use AI for research. And as I've used AI for the things that I am doing, it is research or maybe prep or maybe like coaching for a podcast interview I might do. So I'm using it for that kind of stuff, which we can get into the details. But I think the
Mhm.
best way to use some of these tools is to put in your own sources and your own references that you want, say, ChatGPT to use.
Yep.
So, very specifically, I interviewed someone named Tony Maritato. He's a physical therapist, so he's an expert in his industry already. He also, because of his background, he's able to find good journal references, like medical journal references that are peer reviewed. They are as correct and valid as information as we could use. So he puts that information into ChatGPT as the reference material. Then he asks ChatGPT to give him a list of questions to answer as an expert. Then he uses like a voice typing feature on Google Docs or whatever you want to use. You could use like the voice memo. He answers those questions, puts it in a text document, and then feeds that into ChatGPT. So
Yep.
now, if you remember, we have the medical journals, we have his own input in his own words as an expert, and then he asks for an outline. Maybe he tweaks the outline, maybe he puts in the outline himself, and then you end up with a much better, more customized version. And it's not like sort of a generic article. Plus, it has his own input in
Yep.
ChatGPT can use quotes. So I think that is like the perfect way to do it. It is certainly more manual than some of the bulk publishing tools out there, but I'm not interested in bulk publishing, right? So whatever I do with AI is not related to that. And my take there is like it's interesting. You could earn a lot of money in a short amount of time, but generally I'm looking at longer time frames, and I'm not really interested in working on things that are, riskier. If I'm putting in a bunch of time, I know things that could work really well. Like I know I'm launching a new podcast and a YouTube channel and a brand there. And I know spending time on that's going to pay off. And there's no question, right? And it's probably going to be a higher leverage activity than publishing 3,000 articles on a
Absolutely.
blog and then have it
Yep.
penalized or whatever in like 6 months. So
Yep. Absolutely. And so, yeah, that's interesting. What about link building? Where are you seeing like any link building opportunities today? I know digital PR is just uh, all the hype right now, but where are you seeing opportunities where people could maybe get some links?
I think an underutilized space, and now that I'm talking to a couple more people, they're like, oh, yeah, this works. So podcasting. And this is the hammer that I'm going around and hitting everything with is podcasting. I'm telling people, start a
Hmm.
podcast, do a podcast. Come on, people, podcasting it's awesome. So you can basically go on a little tour, right? You see book authors do this all the time. And you can go pitch yourself to be on podcast. You have to, make sure you have a solid pitch. There's ways to do this where you'll get accepted. I get multiple pitches per day for my shows, and I delete almost all of them. So there's a right way and a wrong way to do this. But if you could be on various shows, then you'll get a link back. It's super niche relevant. They'll probably link back to whatever you want. Like I usually like if someone sends me a list and it's like 5 or 6 links and it's like all their property, like whatever it is, like I'll link to it because it came up in the article, right? Or it came up in the interview rather. So that is really underutilized and secondary, right? So I learned this because I have a show. So someone contacted me from, I don't know, it was some software product. I don't even know what it was. So it was some software product and they were like, "Hey, do you take advertisers for the Doug show?" "Yeah, I do. Like, let's talk. I don't have like a specific rates, but what are you looking for? And we'll figure something out." So they explained a little bit and I was like, "All right, your tool seems fine, but I'm telling you, this is the wrong audience. And I'm telling you, you're not going to get any conversions. But if you want to pay me $500, then that's cool. I'll put the ad in." They're like, "Sure, let's do it." So I ran it. And then after we did the campaign and they paid me on time, I usually get paid up front because I don't want to mess around with other, chasing people around for money. So I was like, "Hey, what's the angle on this?" And I really don't understand why, like, you're not going to get any sales from this. And she was cool. She opened up and she was like, "It's the iHeartRadio link." So she was doing a link building campaign to get an iHeartRadio link. So I went and looked and I'm 90% sure it was like a do follow link from iHeartRadio, which is like a DR90. So I don't even know what it is, but it's like a very big network, right? So there's probably other places where that happens too.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, no, very few people are doing. I'm trying to talk about it a little bit. So those are 2 ways that you can get links via podcasting. And I'll tell you one more is if you launch a show, you're going to show up on different directories all over the place, right? I don't know the threshold, right, on how many shows you need to have, but I was chatting with Shauna Newman, and she mentioned this in the interview where some companies are literally, they're launching a podcast. They'll publish like whatever, 15, 20 episodes. I don't know what it is. And then they'll be on all the directories with a do follow link and it adds authority, right? So and think about this again, take these ideas from somewhere where it works, and then you could transfer it to somewhere else and be like, "Oh, that's a great idea." So let's say you want to speak at a conference, right? And you're like, "Well, people, maybe they don't know me. Maybe you have some imposter syndrome, like a couple other things." But if someone Googles you, they have your pitch, right? They have your pitch and they Google you, they see your YouTube channel, and then they're like, "Oh, there's a podcast too, and he has a handful of episodes." There's like all this evidence that you're an authority, an expert, or at least you're like in the weeds doing stuff. So if you're again, people don't even have to listen to the show as long as you have the presence out there. So podcasting, great way to build links. There's some friction to this, right? It's a little bit harder to do than like, okay, I'm going to go to some crappy agency where they're all buying links from a white label company that everyone else uses, right?
Yep.
So that's too easy. But if you start a show, which is really, it's actually not even that hard, but it takes a little more work. So
A little bit more,
yeah. Again,
interesting. I like that. I
podcasting
like
is the
that take.
hammer. Yeah.
Yeah, everything's solved with podcasting. And I think people have a hard time focusing on like the 3 main things when they're starting a brand new site. What are those first 3 things that you're doing for a brand new site? And also, would you ideally like to have an age domain, an expired domain? Or are you thinking, you know what, I'm going to get a fresh domain? And I know you haven't done it in a while, but still, if you were to do it today.
Right. So yeah, everybody keep that in mind. So age domain for sure. I'm a Otis mentor over there. Those guys are great. And I mean, I think they have some of the best selection, and the vetting process is excellent. So I would start with an age domain, definitely sort of a shortcut. The other stuff, like I said, is probably not very interesting because it is what people were doing like a few years ago. So I would look for the low competition keywords. I would use the keyword golden ratio in conjunction with some other keyword research methods, but I would use that. The other thing that I would do that I wasn't doing in the past, and I think it's super important, or at least the word on the street is topical authority. So I would have a topical map and I would be super intentional about completing one cluster, one, sort of branch of the map at a time before moving on to the next one. The other approach that maybe I did in the past is like you kind of spread it out and you're like, I'm going to work on these things in parallel. I would not do that. I would focus on one branch at a time and really
Nice.
nail it down.
And how are you building those branches?
So in theory, I would probably use an AI tool to do the heavy lifting at first, and then probably would just look at the different topic areas. And instead of thinking like an SEO, I would think like a book author or a librarian and put things where they make sense. And this is one of the luckily I have a lot of footage of me saying stuff like this. So I've been saying it for years that when there's something that seems a little funny or I'm not sure what to do, there's these classic dilemmas like, should I use this keyword or this keyword? They're kind of similar. I take off my tinfoil SEO hat and I think like a normal person and I just ignore what Google might think because they change what they want all the time. So why should I make decisions? And I'm coming from a place really of privilege because I don't have to, have every single decision right because it's not going to be right. So all I can do is do the best I can and just think like a normal person and try to help the searcher the best I can. And there have been times, and actually, if you go look on Niche Site Project, like I tried to rank, Amazon affiliate for years, and I had like a super long article, and then I separated it, and then I tried to like do different things, and eventually, I was just chasing my tail around. Like I was never able to like get up higher because I wasn't doing link building. But at the end of the day, I just organized it in the most logical way possible, and then I moved on, and I don't care about it anymore. So, if you're working for a client, you can't necessarily do that. But the thing is, like, yeah, you may end up in a place where you're like, this worked 6 months ago, and now they've changed some things. So, like, topical maps and this length of
Yeah.
an article is too long. So, we need to shorten it. But overall, I would just like try to logically, put it in a book. That's all.
Okay. Yeah. Take off the tinfoil hat. It's important. It's hard though. It's hard when you're so deep in the weeds. It's really hard to just think like a normal person. Just no, this has this volume. That's why I'm going for it. But maybe it doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense for your website. Yeah,
Right. And I think,
happens all the time.
the other part is, if you are in the industry a little bit more and you're going to conferences and like your social circles and mastermind is around SEO, like you can get really deep in the weeds and things seem totally normal to do. And sometimes they're really not if you step away. And I'm part of the sort of financial independence retire early community. And there
Cool.
are every subculture or counterculture has this thing where like if you're around enough people doing it, you're like, oh, this seems totally normal. But a lot of times it's not normal at all.
Hmm.
When you get around like a normal civilian population, it's very
Yeah,
odd, you know.
yeah, yeah. It is. It is. So back to the odd stuff. Um, your thoughts on EEAT, EAT, call it whatever you want to call it. Do you believe in it? Is it link based? Can you just fake an author, fake a LinkedIn profile, fake all that?
I don't know. I don't have enough experience on the field. I think it is probably link based overall. And, I mean, we're kind of splitting hairs. Like the links matter, but like is that where Google is evaluating EAT? I'm not really sure. If
Hmm.
we're talking like, hey, you're going to work on a project and you're thinking I'm going to work on this for a little while, is it worth your time to create that appearance where you could create a persona? And I think it could be possible, but for me personally, when I look at my life and what I want to spend time on, I'm like, do I want to spend time? Can we cuss here?
Absolutely. Yeah. Do whatever you, yeah.
Yeah. So if I'm looking and I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to work on this project. I'm going to create a fake LinkedIn profile. I'm going to create this other social stuff, but I also need to make sure it looks real. So I need to connect with other people and do this other stuff. It's like, what the fuck are we doing? This is bananas, right? Like, why would I spend my time creating that stuff? And no offense to anyone who is spending their time doing this. I'm not talking to you personally or anything, but for me, as I'm middle aged, right? I keep referencing this. For people who don't know what I look, I'm bald, right? I'm like 44 years old. I'm on the tail end of the life here. So
Jesus,
yeah.
let's not get
So,
dramatic here.
yeah. So, but we all have limited time out there, right? So
Right. Yeah.
so keep that in mind. So that is what I'm thinking about. Like, do I want to spend time building this fake persona and all this stuff? And the answer is no. And I cannot answer for anyone else. And I will not judge I won't apply my judgment filter to anyone else. But for me personally, not my thing. So can you do that? My hunch is you could probably trick Google. Sure. Yeah. I bet you could do it. So, and I bet there are plenty of examples where people did a good job and there's a great sort of network, sort of a layer where, if you look at it, you're like, this looks real. They actually have some connections or some posts. And I think that's possible. It lines up with some of the stuff that we were doing in, whatever, 2011 to 2015 or 16, setting up fake blogs and stuff. We tricked Google back then. This is a little more sophisticated. So what do
Mhm.
you think?
I think it's basically link based. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's all links.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know there's a lot of people that are building these networks of like fake doctors, fake, you name it, anything, just to get past that
Yeah.
level of the EAT. So who knows?
Yeah.
Um, Question about the future of SEO. Where do you think we're headed? Clearly, SGE has gotten delayed, or we don't really know what's going on. Um, what do you think is happening?
I don't, yeah, I don't know. I have to be honest and say, with probably the last 18 months or so, you know, I, I was not I was not on board with the AI content, and Jasper was kind of the front runner for a couple years, and I was just like, this is not that good. And then ChatGPT really changed things, and it accelerated much faster than I expected. Once I saw some of the power, I was like, okay, things are going to change a little bit faster than we think. When we zoom out a little bit, we I mean, things aren't that much different, and yet things are different in the rate that content publishers are able to publish, and
Hmm.
it's dramatic, and the quality is probably as good as some writers out there were producing anyway, except it's 150 times faster or 1,000 times faster or whatever. So I think, like most things, it's probably going to change a little bit slower. Like, there's going to be some pieces that will be consistent. I think on the edge, it could be much faster than we think. So I mean, I have no really specific sort of predictions. I mean, thinking out loud, it seems like Google is trying, like they realize they have a problem, and the helpful content update at the end of 2023 was perhaps an overcorrection. And I think Google will try to get it back. I mean, the thing is, I was chatting with some neighbors who were, they're like in their 60s, and they were like, "Oh yeah, like Google hasn't been working as well. I've actually had to research several times, and they would get Reddit results, and they're like, I don't want to read the Reddit result. I want to go to a website where a pro, someone who works in the industry, can help sort out some of the questions I have." So like regular people are seeing this. So my hunch is the next year or two, Google will be trying to like figure out how to deal with all the AI content, because the fact is some of the AI content is probably good and it's probably right, and it might be based
Yeah,
on like
and it's
human
gonna get
input.
better.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So
it's
I
gonna
don't know.
get better.
I don't know.
And what about someone who's thinking about starting in a new niche site today? What are you telling them? What are you saying?
Currently, And I have a couple videos on this, but currently I would say I w- I would look at it as starting like a brand, and I would focus on YouTube and podcasting as well, all at the same time, because at least then you have a little bit more of a footprint. It also forces you to actually be interested or part of the niche or the community or whatever. And I mean, you don't have to be passionate about it, but you have to have some interest level, and it's gonna get hard. Like, whatever you're working on, it's not gonna go like you think. It's gonna take you 3 to 5 times as long as you think. Everyone thinks they're a little bit smarter than average, but, by definition, most people are not. So, you're not gonna be able to do it faster, and it will take you a little bit longer. If you know that you're going to be starting a podcast and a YouTube channel, and you need to have some written content as well, you probably are gonna try to pick something that you care about, because you know you don't wanna write about,
Yep.
something just random that is like a good keyword, and people used to do that a lot more. So, other than that, it's a lot of the same stuff. Now, one thing, I mentioned the sort of 3 tiers. I'll add another one, which is an email list. So
Yep.
those are the 4 things that I've spent the most time on in the last few years, and it really helped me be somewhat immune to the Google updates, because I was like, "You know what? If I rank for some stuff, that'll be great, but I'm not going to put too much effort into it." But email list, podcast, and a blog, those are pretty much independent. Like, no one is going to, like, deplatform you. YouTube, pretty independent, but your channel could disappear. Pretty rare, but you occasionally hear that happening,
Don't
right?
say that.
Y
That
y
scares
y
the shit out of me.
Yeah, you're telling me. I mean, the thing is, they don't have good customer support for the for creators.
Yeah, I've
So,
heard I've heard that, yeah.
um, it can happen, but fairly rare. The point is, like, those things are independent, and if the hosting company is like, "You can't be here anymore," you can go to another hosting company. Same with the email service provider, like, you have the email list. So those are super important, and I think a focus on having those 4 different areas is really important. It gives you great skills too. The cool part is, and what I'm gonna be doing with, like, my new show, and I'm starting to do a little bit more with my current show, The Doug Show, is repurposing the content in a very intentional way. So, I'll record a video, which has audio and video. Then you can take that transcript. I use Descript and get a transcript, and then I'll feed that into ChatGPT or Gemini, and then you can get an outline for a blog post. You could tweak it, do what you need to. Then you have a blog post. And then you could take that, and then you could say, all right, like, can we turn this into an email sequence? Can we turn this into just some educational content for the email? So I created one piece of content, but I put it in like 4 different places. If you
Right.
want to take it a step further, you could, again, I'm not a social like short form video person, but someone could take those shorter clips, put them on various social channels, and just have one piece of content that you created, and then you just kind of propagated it out across whatever you want to, whatever wherever your audience is that's where you should put it.
Amazing. Well, yeah, it's a lot of value there. Um, that was sick, Doug. Thank you. Thanks for taking the time. Where can people find you? Where would you
Thank you.
want?
Yeah, so YouTube is probably the biggest area, but you can go over to Niche Site Project and sign up for the email list. I usually let people know when a new podcast or YouTube video comes out. And the other place I'll point people is dougcunnington.com. So I'm starting to just mention that here and there to hopefully get some links to it. Another little pro tip.
Yeah,
And
I saw in the Word document you sent me in the Google Doc, you had all the links. So you're just ready. I
right,
like
yeah,
it.
yeah.
That's smart.
Yeah, and if you
Smart.
want to, like, we could put that in. I don't know if you have like freebies or whatever, but like basically, I have like a podcast prep sheet. So if someone invites me to a show, I have my bio, I have an image for the thumbnail, I have the links
Perfect.
and suggested topics, right? So come in like a pro, And then
Yep.
someone's like, oh, okay, like this is going to be a much easier interview than the random
Yeah.
person that just showed up.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Amazing. Well, thanks for taking the time. That was really cool. Thank you.
Thank you.